That's how many saunas they are there. And apart from the private ones, they have the public ones. Okay, they are all over the place. It's something very cultural. Every single Finnish people needs to go to their sauna. That is something very, very cultural. And if you're not familiar with the sauna, this is what the sauna is. This room made out of wood. Then you have these rocks. These rocks get heated. Then you put water there, and that steam, covers the whole room, increasing the body temperature of the person. Interesting statistic of COVID-19. In Finland, 75% of the people that died of COVID-19 were foreigners living in Finland. See, the foreigners don't do the sauna. There's a lot of saunas there. That's not like part of their culture. Finnish people, at least once a week, they are going to do their sauna. Look at this one. This is from the Indians from Mexico, the Aztecs. And here they are doing their own version of sauna. This guy's putting some wood there. This image has it's like 500 years of age. And then this fire is going to heat this room. So then they'll have a similar effect as the sauna. This is something that is called the temazcal. That's the term they use there for this type of sweat lodge. And we know why it works. Here's the science why it works. So you can see here, in my book, I talk quite a bit about it. There's something called the interference. Interfere with virus and bacteria. So we could actually predict who was going to end up in the hospital with COVID-19, with severe type of COVID-19. Your interference predicted that. So people that had low levels of interference were in really, really big trouble. If they catch this bug, they were in trouble. So when the levels of interference are high, virus and bacteria have a hard time infecting you. So you can see here what happens. If you elevate the body temperature to 102 Fahrenheit, notice what happened to your levels of interference. They explode on your body. See? And that is really, really good. So when I was in Finland last year in the winter, I told my friends that I wanted to do the real Finnish sauna experience. So they take out the chainsaws and we went down to the lake and we made some holes there on the frozen lake. It were nice, big, chunks of ice that we had to remove from that lake. Then we fire up the sauna, and then boom, and then you count 1, 2, and 3, and there you go down. You can see how thick the ice is there. That ice is nice and thick. Finnish people have been doing this, for thousands of years. And they are into something, Finnish people, among the longest living people on earth, So if it's as bad as something, these guys will be dead by now, Yet they are thriving in their longevity. Excellent way to improve the immunity. Actually, if you go to my YouTube account, you should be able to see this one. I just recorded this one. I literally came from Finland here. I was there. And I recorded a little bit there the session of that Finnish sauna. So reminder, this book, Pandemic Busters, all the topics that we're talking about, you're going to find the information in that book. Notice here the Finnish proverb that I quoted here in the book. A home without a sauna is not a home. You have to have a sauna, according to the Finnish people, in order to have a home. So there's a whole chapter on hydrotherapy where I develop the subject there. Very good. Twitter account. Let me show you a few of my latest tweets that I put there. Look at this one, very interesting. Why is it important to do exercise? Because it's anti-inflammatory. Inflammation is what ages you. So by decreasing inflammation, you literally slow down aging. This other one, this keto diet that is all over the internet and so forth, that stuff is horrible for your health. Avoid it at all cost. This is one of the latest studies that came about it. This is the Journal of the American College of Cardiology showing how that keto diet increases tremendously your risk of a stroke or a heart attack. There is no need to be following such diet. This other one, fascinating study. This one is from Harvard University, and it was documenting how as church attendance have gone down, mental health problems have gone up. Interesting, isn't it? How is important, that fellowship and connection and spiritual factor in your life, it is good for your mental health. This one, they were calculating what is the optimum amount of outdoor activity for your best mental health? 67 minutes. That's how much you should be shooting for. 67 minutes to be outside to get the most benefit from that. This one documenting how sitting down for too long is not good for you. So not only stay sitting down, you need to be getting up on a regular basis. If your work involves sitting down, you need to put a timer and a reminder to be getting up, because sitting down for too long, it's not good for you. This one about alcohol. We drank for happiness and became unhappy. We drank for joy and became miserable. We drank for sociability and became argumentative. We drank for friendship and made enemies. We drank for strength but felt weak. We drank for bravery and became afraid. We drank to feel heavily and ended up feeling like hell. We drank for freedom and became slaves. Isn't that the reality of alcohol, isn't it? There's a lot of research coming up on alcohol. I like to put them there on my Twitter account. So you can find that there also. This one, the effect of caffeine, how it damages the quality of your sleep, and that is not good. So the effect has an 8.8 hours effect, blocking your melatonin, the hormone that makes you young. Why would you want to block your melatonin? And if you take caffeine and you do exercise, it's even worse. 13 hours the effect lasts. So watch out for that. So all those and many, many more, you'll find them there in that Twitter account, motivating you to do those lifestyle changes in the long term. So I want to talk to you this afternoon about stopping the number one killer. Let me tell you a story of my friend Jorge. I grew up with Jorge. We were together in school, and then later on, we kind of, separated in distance and so forth. I always knew what's going on with him, through common friends and so forth. And he was 2 years younger than me, and yet 10 years ago, he had his second heart attack, and he didn't make it. This is something dangerous, to have a heart attack. Look at this one statistic. One person dies every 36 seconds in the United States from cardiovascular disease. About 659,000 people in the United States die from heart disease each year. 1 in every 4 deaths. Is that good or bad? That is not good, isn't it? Because it is quite high, the number. So as we're going to be learning today, we need to make sure that our choices are correct, because our choices have consequences. Therefore, we need to be paving a road towards health. Look at how common is this problem worldwide. Is it something rare? And in those countries where it is not first, it's probably second. That is how common this problem is worldwide. Look at this interesting study on the causes of death in America. You see heart disease, cancer, and stroke. So these researchers, what they did, they didn't just were satisfied with knowing the causes. They wanted to know what caused those problems. So that's what this study focused on. So they found that tobacco is a quite important factor. Tobacco, damages the blood vessels. That's why it increases heart disease. 2, poor diet and inactivity. Look at the big chunk of those heart attacks that happen due to poor diet and inactivity. And alcohol also plays a significant role in multiple of those deaths. So basically, alcohol, diet activity, microbial, and toxins. If you get the mathematics, that's 90% of the causes of why these things occur happen to be because of the habits that we have or don't have. And look at this one. This is interesting study. This is a journal Circulation from the American Heart Association. And it was showing how heart disease doesn't start when you are 50 or 60. In America, heart disease starts quite young. Look at this guy. He's 19 years of age, and he already has heart disease. This is the average American here. That is what happens with the American lifestyle. You can see the plaque here that he has. So this is the artery that is of his heart, and here is the plaque that he already has. Now you may say, oh, doctor, big deal, it's just a little bit there. It is a big deal because if you study how fluids flow on a tube, if you decrease that diameter by 10%, you don't decrease the flow by 10%, it's exponential, okay? So it is a big deal. Now, here's the most worrisome part. This lady, 33 years old. She's like a really, really old lady, isn't it? Yes or no? No, she's still quite young. Yet, when they went ahead and checked the artery of her heart, you can see that half of her artery was already clogged. But you know what's the worrisome part? If you go and talk to this lady, she doesn't have a single symptom of heart disease. Her chest doesn't feel heavy or hurts. She doesn't get a pain that runs through her left arm or to her neck. When she goes up a flight of steps, everything looks fine. She seems to have, good ability to do exercise and so forth. So that's the problem. She is really close to the precipice, and yet she may think that everything is okay and I can continue operating the way I have been operating, and that's not necessarily true, because what she was doing somewhat, it was increasing, that risk of atherosclerosis. So here's the physics there if you're interested in, how as you block things, that blockage has multiple problems. Here's another one. This is another journal from the American College of Cardiology, and it was documenting how in young people that had a violent death, ages 20 to 32 of age, coronary heart disease, atherosclerosis on those arteries of the heart was already present in 78% of them. And narrowing of 50% in 21, narrowing of 75 in 9% of them. Look at this journal for Pediatrics of America. Look at what it says there. Almost all persons have aortic fatty streaks by the age of 10. It's the reason why God says that we are a special people. Have you read that in the Bible? God doesn't want us to be, as the statistics of the rest of the population. So this is how it works. Atherosclerosis starts to take place in the arteries, and the arteries start to clog in. And where that blockage occurs is what we call it. If it happens to occur at the level of the heart, that's what we call a heart attack. If this happens at the level of the brain, that is a stroke. And look at this one. This is not a usual surgery. This is more of an experimental surgery. So they found the arteries of the heart, and look at the junk that is coming out of those arteries of the heart. That is the famous atherosclerosis. So, in parentheses, learn the symptoms for fast, because you need to act fast if somebody has this. You're talking to somebody and their face starts to drop, one of their sides of the face. If the person feels that suddenly they got weak in one of the arms or legs, if they're speaking normally and suddenly they start speaking gibberish that you don't even understand, you call 911 ASAP, because this could be signs of a stroke. And the faster you act, the least the damage that can occur at that brain. So that's why you want him to get him in the hospital ASAP. And another very common problem today happened to be erectile dysfunction. And the number one cause, there's many causes for this, but the most common cause happens to be the arteries that go to the male organ start to get clogged. Not enough blood flow arrives to the member, and that's why the problem. No wonder why Viagra is such a big seller, Now, a wise physician knows that when that problem is starting there in the male organ, the heart attack is a few years coming up. So watch out. If this problem is starting to occur, it can be telling us that there could be more of a systemic type of atherosclerosis in the brain. So in our research about lifestyle, this is one of my clinical cases that I published. This is one of the patients from Weimar. So this patient came to us because he was complaining of diabetes of many years. Also, he had a problem with blood pressure, 158/78. Even though he was taking 2 medications for blood pressure, still his blood pressure was too high. And he had a very important problem with his weight, 381 pounds of weight. So look at the power of lifestyle medicine. In a matter of 18 days, this patient was able to lose 16 pounds. And what was he doing? Whole food, plant-based diet, exercise, rest, prayer, and the whole new start. That was basically the intervention that we were applying. And notice his blood pressure, 116/72, even though we took him out of his medications. See? That is beautiful numbers. His glucose came down to acceptable levels. We had to stop his diabetes medication because he no longer needed that medication. Now, after coming to the program, he learned his lesson very well. He didn't say, I'm going to go back to my old lifestyle once I get home. No, he learned his lesson very well, and now he continued in the long term with those changes. And you can see here, after 11 months, notice his blood pressure is beautiful, 110 over 68, no blood pressure medication. His cholesterol, wonderful, 140. That's exactly where I want to see your cholesterol, 150 and under. That's where your total cholesterol should be. LDL cholesterol, 61. Beautiful. That's how I want to see your cholesterol, 75 and under. And the most surprising number here is this one that is called hemoglobin A1C. It tells us that this patient is no longer a diabetic. Is that good or bad? Good. See, I worked for 30 years in these lifestyle centers, and I have seen this over and over again. And look at him. After losing 64 kilograms, 141 pounds, look at that. No longer obese, no longer diabetic, no longer heart risk due to the fact that that blood pressure came down. Now, as you can see, this is something that I have seen many, many times. You know, this is not like, oh, I saw this one once every 20 years, you know. No, you know, you see this at the lifestyle center as you attack the root cause of the problem. In fact, I think you guys should have a lifestyle center here in Florida, you know. I mean, I think the closest one would be Alabama, I guess, or Uchee Pines, or Wildwood up in Georgia. Notice this study. BBC News reported the results of the study, how 75% of the doctors are not aware that type 2 diabetes can be potentially reversed. So if the doctor doesn't know, we have some challenges here, you know, because how are they going to help the patient reverse their problem? So notice this interesting story. In the Marshall Islands are in the Pacific. You know? The Marshall Islands, the American government used those islands as a testing site for their atomic bombs. Okay, so after detonating a few atomic bombs, the radiation started reaching the nearby islands, and the people started getting sick because of radiation, a few of them. And as a result of that, they sued the American government for causing that. And of course, they won the suit. So imagine that you're in those islands, beautiful paradisiacal islands, and now the government is paying you a bunch of money. What are you going to do with so much money? I mean, there's not like malls and things there to go shopping and so forth. Well, these people got a second bomb, but this time was a bomb of food. And they radically changed the way they were eating. And from a diet based on fruits, roots, and vegetables, today their diet, their favorite food item is Spam. I was actually wondering always, who eats this stuff, you know? But I've been there, you know, to those islands. They have the pile of this stuff. I mean, these people love this stuff. I mean, that stuff is like one of the very, very worst. That's the reason why in your email is called spam, you know, stuff that you don't want, you know. You really don't want to eat that stuff. Yet, this caused 90% of the people in the Marshall Islands either are diabetic or pre-diabetic. That is how bad the impact is of that. This Surgeon General report, 2/3 of the deaths in the U.S. are related to bad luck, says there, isn't it? What says there? Diet, isn't it? That is a very important source of disease. So it's interesting that some people, as they age, their arteries look like this. Yet at the same time, other people, as they age, their artery looks like this. So we need to understand that in general, many of the choices that we are taking are paving the way on one of these two pathways. So, what gets sick in the arteries is something called the endothelium. If you take an artery, you cut it, that innermost layer, that's called the endothelium. And as this researcher says, we age at the same rate that our endothelium does. So if the endothelium starts getting clogged, this is what happens. See, this is the way that you bring blood, nutrients, removal of toxins in the body through the blood vessels. Now, the way that it works is that oxygen and those nutrients, they need to cross the thickness of the artery or blood vessel and then reach the organ and so forth. But if this starts to clog in with atherosclerosis, those nutrients, that oxygen is going to have a hard time reaching there. That's why we need to keep our blood vessels nice and healthy. And something that is really, really bad for your arteries is something that is called the oxidized cholesterol. That is exactly what is going to be one of the most harmful things to your arteries. So this is the way that it works. It's just like the police that you find here in Florida. Have you ever been driven there and there's some police there next to the road, keeping an eye, making sure, people are behaving and following the rules and so forth. So in the same way, throughout your blood vessels, there are police that are stationed there, trying to make sure that everybody, is behaving and so forth. So anytime oxidized cholesterol passes through there, your immune system goes and eats literally this oxidized cholesterol, but this stuff is so toxic, the body cannot do much. So those cells from the immune system die, and that cholesterol starts to accumulate in the blood vessel. Now, if you were to eat this oxidized cholesterol, once a year, is not that big of a deal. But oxidized cholesterol continually and regularly starts creating this, because there's so many of those, immune system cells that died that start to accumulate all over the place. And the blood vessel, instead of being nice and smooth, you start creating these peaks and valleys. You think that's good for you? Not necessarily, isn't it? Look at this one. This is a very famous painter of Mexico. It's called Rufino Tamayo. And he documented the life of the indigenous people of Mexico. How many people with overweight do you count there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many? None. Now, some boats came to the Americas that brought all kinds of things that were not here, as we were mentioning this morning. The beef and the chickens and all these things were brought by them. And lifestyle changes in Latin America have caused this, lots of people having problems with their weight and so forth. Now, I was in Africa many times, especially in the rural areas. I get a glimpse of how my ancestors used to live, because it's a very simple life there in those areas of Africa. Lots of physical activity. We weren't going there to the schools to give some health lectures. you can see not a single one of those children has a problem with their weight. And they took us for a meal. It's a typical meal that they're eating, not because they read the latest, health magazine or something, but that's the food that is available there. So it consisted of a big pot of beans, and then something that is like some sort of avocado smashed there, and then some tortilla look-alike things that they call the chapatis, and then some sauce that you put there on those beans, and then you can see there's some fruit. That's typical meal, that they are eating. And there, in that area that I was visiting in Tanzania, they had to cultivate their own food. So everybody was busy there working the field. So they have their homes, and then around the homes, there's a big space where they plant all kinds of things in order to have the food that they need. Now, you have the same genetics, yet you change the environment, and you have problems like this. See, it is not necessarily the genes, but the fact of the environment that we are put in that can have a positive or negative impact. And this is my study. In this study, we were documenting how 93% of the people that are taking high blood pressure medication, when they come to our 18-day program in Weimar, 93% of them, the majority of them, are able to stop their medication of blood pressure because their numbers come down to normal levels. That is how powerful this New Start program is. Now, here is the problem, as I was mentioning to you. As the arteries keep on clogging in, you can see that the blood vessels starts to clog in, but the problem is that you don't have symptoms. Symptoms will occur when you have a blockage of about 85 to 90% of the blood vessel. That's when the symptoms of heart disease will occur. And the problem is that once the symptoms start to occur, the problem is way, way advanced. So more serious problems are around the corner and so forth. But still, we can do something about it, as we're going to be learning today. So something we have been learning is that the gut bacteria that you have in your digestive tract plays a very important role in atherosclerosis. This is the fascinating finding. If you are somebody that is eating some animal product every week, the bacteria from your intestines, anytime you eat those animal products, they harm your arteries. But if you are full plant-based and once a year you eat something with animals, because of the good bacteria that diet encourages, you don't get heart disease. Fascinating, isn't it? So this is some of the latest research that has come out. It's called the TMAO. And we know that there's definitely a relationship between cholesterol levels and your risk for a serious heart disease. So that's why we measure your cholesterols. That's why we want to know where your numbers are at. And here is the important part. Cholesterol only comes from foods that come from animals. Plants don't have cholesterol. Now, one of the semi-exceptions is coconut. Coconut doesn't have cholesterol, but could raise the cholesterol levels due to its highly saturated forms. In top 10 things that harm your blood vessels. So we have any type of processed foods. We're learning now that things like sugar and white flour could potentially have a negative effect on your arteries. That's why those foods, we need to decrease them or eliminate them. Processed meats, red meat, chicken. Did you know that that's the main source of cholesterol in the American diet? Butter and margarine, fried fruit, fast foods, cheese, pastries and sweets, sugary drinks, and alcohol, which happens to be a neurotoxin and damages even your brain cells. So here's a fascinating, eye-opening study. This is Dr. Dean Ornish. I happen to be co-author with him in a nutrition book by the name of Rethink Food. So Dean Ornish did the following. He had patients with severe heart disease. It was so severe, they were candidates at having open heart surgery. So he randomized this group into two things. First group, they follow the usual counsel that they give to somebody that has cholesterol problems. What is the usual counsel they tell you? They're going to tell you, you don't eat red meat, but eat white meats. Have you heard that one? Don't eat full-fat milk, but drink, the low-fat type of milk and so forth. Eat fish and so forth. So these people were religiously following that counsel. They were really, really careful to follow exactly that counsel, which basically is about 26% fat and 250 milligrams of cholesterol a day. If you follow that very, very carefully, 79% of those people, their heart disease is gonna get worse. Okay? Now, why they give that counsel, I don't know. Because it doesn't work. Yet, this has been documented very clearly. And then what they did, they followed these people over time to see what was happening to their blood vessels if they follow very carefully that white meat type of approach. Look at that. After 3 years, 41% of them, their heart disease started to get worse. After 5 years, 65% of them, the heart disease started to get worse. After 7 years, 77% of them started to get worse. And after 10 years, 85% of them started to get worse. Does it work? No, it doesn't work. Now, the second group in his published paper, this was published, by the way, in the journal Lancet, one of the most prestigious journals in the world. So the second group was doing the following. It was attacking the source of the problem. See, it's like if your sink gets broken and the water starts spilling out. We can fix the problem two ways. One, we can buy the most expensive mop in the market and just remove water from the floor. Does it kind of control the problem? We're kind of, you're kind of removing the water, even though more water is falling down. That is, trying to deal this problem just with pharmaceuticals without lifestyle. But I have a better idea. Why don't we fix the faucet? Wouldn't that be a better idea? If you can fix the faucet, then the water won't be spilling out and you won't have that problem of water in the floor in the first place. That is the lifestyle approach. And that's what they did in the second group. So here's the second group. Second group, maximum 10% of their calories were fat. And here's the important number. 5 milligrams maximum a day of cholesterol or less. If you can do less, it's even better. So if you can do this, this is what's going to happen to your blood vessels. So you can see that their cholesterol start coming down, but look at the beauty of this. What happened to 82% of them? Regression. The arteries started to heal, which is very good news. Then 14% didn't advance, didn't reverse, still is good news. This thing stops, progressing, that's actually good news if you can maintain it there. And only a 4% continue with progression, and this could be related to things such as stress. High stress will stimulate high cholesterol and could potentially have a negative effect on the blood vessels. So basically, it shows that if you are going to follow the 200 milligram cholesterol a day, that the LDL is not going to go down, the total cholesterol is not going to go down. And when you show by angiography, by showing graphically what's happening to those blood vessels, you can see that there is progression of the problem. So how many milligrams we said? 5. Remember that number, 5 or less. Here are some foods there with cholesterol. Fruits, how much cholesterol? None. Grains, how much cholesterol? None. Nuts, no cholesterol. In fact, by the way, nuts function like statins. Nuts actually lower cholesterol in the body. There's multiple studies from Loma Linda University demonstrating that. Vegetables, 0. How much does light cream has? Is that more than 5 or less than 5? More than 5. It will create atherosclerosis. Milk, how many? 18. In fact, the whole milk, 33. Now, this is an interesting thing. See, there's an interesting study that was done. Who do you think has more cholesterol? The milk of the humans or the milk of the cows? Actually, the milk of the humans has more cholesterol. But as I told you at the beginning, oxidized cholesterol is the problem. So when the baby is drinking the mother's milk, that milk is never exposed to the air. It goes from the breast to their mouth, no time for oxidation whatsoever. That milk doesn't harm that baby. But what do? We take the milk out of the cow, let it oxidize, and then you drink it. So if you want cow's milk that is not oxidized, what do you need to do? You need to hang from there. No, because of hygiene, and so forth, may not be the best idea to do that. Then we have mayonnaise. How much cholesterol? Is that less than 5 or more than 5? There is this Vegenaise. Have you seen it? It tastes things good and it doesn't have the issues with the cholesterol. Ice cream, how much? 29. Butter, 31. Look at one egg. 213. You're eating your cholesterol for the whole month in just one sitting down. Tremendously damaging to your arteries. There's a paper published by Harvard University documenting that consumption of eggs is equivalent as smoking, as how much it damages your blood vessels. So not the best thing to consume. And then tuna, how much? Clams, 57. Crab, 64. And then here is the myths of mince. Let me see. For those that wanted to take a picture, here's your picture of the time there. By the way, I talk about this thing in my book also. So chicken with chicken without the skin, how much cholesterol? Okay, let's put into perspective. What about pork? How much cholesterol? Is there a big difference? No, there is not big difference. In fact, look at this. How much does beef have? How much does chicken with skin has? The patient comes to me frustrated and they tell me, doctor, I'm eating so much chicken, I think I'm going to start growing up feathers very soon. Yet I don't understand why my cholesterol doesn't come down. It's not going to come down. What was the goal? 5 is too much cholesterol there, But doctor, I'm just cooking it, without oil, it's a little bit fried and so on. It doesn't matter. It still has too much cholesterol. Also, chicken is a high-fat food. Low-fat food is 15 or 12 percentage of fat per serving. Chicken is about 23, 24. So it's a high-fat food. That's why if you boil the chicken, what happens in the top of that water? It's all this saturated fat that starts to show up. Oyster, 84. Sardines, 120. Shrimp, 165. And then the internal organs are extremely high. The beef kidneys, 329. The beef liver, 410. The caviar, 500. And the food with the highest amount of cholesterol happens to be the beef brains, 1,697. In Mexico, they like to eat the beef brain taco. As I tell my friends, do not eat this stuff. You're going to acquire the intelligence of the cow, If you eat those beef brain tacos, avoid them. It's not good for you. Look at this. Even the American Heart Association got on the ball now. Look at the recommendation that they came out in 2022. They say whole food, plant-based diet, keep your weight under control, exercise, don't smoke, have your blood pressure under control, keep your LDL low, it needs to be 75 and under, and keep that insulin resistance, under control, and so forth. If you can do this, this could have a humongous impact on your health. Look at this one. Did you know that 80% of cardiac events can be prevented through education and lifestyle changes? Now, here is the good news. This is Dr. Caldwell Esstill. I'm a co-author with him in that nutrition book that I was telling you. Look at this one. This patient had severe atherosclerosis. You can see, here's the blood vessel is open, and then suddenly becomes thin. Do you see here? Because all this is a plaque of atherosclerosis. Now, this is the same patient 32 months later. Notice how his blood vessel healed. Is that good or bad? Good. Fantastic. Doctor, what pill was he taking? No pill. 32 months on a plant-based diet without cholesterol-lowering medication. I know Dr. Esstill, as part of his protocol, he also removes any form of caffeine. Caffeine has a very negative effect on the health of your blood vessels. Here's another example. You can see how it closes up. It opened up after 60 months with the plant-based diet. This one is nice and open and then suddenly becomes thin here. Same blood vessel, nice and open 60 months later following that whole food plant-based diet. Another one, This one is so severe that the blood vessel almost disappear, because of so much atherosclerosis. 60 months later, that blood vessel has been healed. This is my study. In this one, we were documenting how that plant-based diet and lifestyle patients that have already severe atherosclerosis in their chest, and they start getting this heaviness or pain in the chest, in a matter of 18 days, that angina starts to decrease or go away, secondary to the fact that their cholesterols start coming down, the exercise, the rest, the less stress, and so forth as they come and experience that. This is another one of my studies. This one is fascinating. So in this study, we're documenting the following. When somebody comes to Weimar, what they do what is called a stress test. So they put an EKG in your chest, and they put you to do exercise. As you do exercise, you work the heart, and the blood vessels that are damaged start to show in the EKG. And the way that we see that is by something that is called, when we read the EKG, we read something that is called ST depression. Okay? So we see depressions there on the blood vessels that are clogged in. Notice what happened. In only 18 days, those people that had clogged blood vessels, half of them, when we repeated the study by the end of the 18 days, it showed that the EKG was improving, which means the arteries started to heal. 18 days. That's where the process starts of healing those arteries of the heart. Look at this interesting fact that happened in Norway. As I told you, I speak Norwegian because I used to live there. And Norway, during the Second World War, the German soldiers were interested in conquering Norway because in Norway there's a lot of farming. So the Germans actually conquered Norway. And what they did, they took all the animal foods from Norway in order to feed their advancing Nazi armies as they were going in other places in Europe. So they took their cows, they took their chickens, they took their dogs, they took their pigs, and all these animal foods, they took them away from the Norwegians. And notice the fascinating thing that happened. As the animals went away, the number of heart attacks and strokes in Norway started to decrease until 1945. Anybody knows what happened in 1945? The end of the war. And the cows came back, and the chickens came back, and the pigs came back. And notice what happened to heart disease in Norway, up and up and up and up, to the point that in 1970, Norway used to have one of the highest rates of heart disease in the world. Fascinating, isn't it? What happened? Now you can only imagine that something like this must have happened among the people of Israel. Remember when God took them out of Egypt? What diet were they following? A whole food, plant-based diet, Yet some of them complain, isn't it? Oh, I miss, my pots of meat, they say, Well, they brought those pots of meat, and what happened? They started getting sick, secondary to eating those foods. So, as I told you, oxidized cholesterol is a big deal. In this study, they were giving different types of foods to monkeys, and then they will check the health of those arteries in order to document what are the foods that damage more the arteries? Here the list. So you have custard mixes. What's a custard? What are the ingredients? Milk, eggs, and sugar. Anytime you add sugar and milk, you oxidize even more that cholesterol. So that's why custard mixes there are on number one. Same story as ice cream, by the way. What is ice cream? Is milk and what? And sugar. Not the best thing to partake. Now today you have a plant-based ice cream. They taste the same. If you close your eyes and give it, you don't even taste the difference, And they have all kinds of options. Almond and soy and oat and all kinds of different ones, You do not need that milk ice cream. Then the second one, pancake mixes. Why is pancake mixes so high? Well, if you check the ingredients, one of their main ingredients happen to be powder egg. So if you're doing powder egg, what are you doing? Every single particle of the egg, you are exposing it to the air, oxidizing that cholesterol, causing tremendous harm to the blood vessel. And as I mentioned to you, mother's milk is never oxidized. It does not damage the arteries of the baby. Parmesan cheese and lard. Those were the foods that had the highest damage to the blood vessels. So, as you can see, there is hope. We can do something about it. We can make changes so that we can stop that atherosclerosis from winning the battle in our midst. So remember, we need that integrative type of approach regarding the exercise, regarding the rest, regarding the stress levels, regarding the factors that may be damaging to those blood vessels. And last, let me tell you the story of one of our patients. He came to us because he had 70% of blockage to the artery that goes to his brain. In fact, his doctor had told him, I'm sorry, you're probably going to end up with a stroke very soon, so make sure you take care of all your things and will and everything, because I don't think you're going to live for too long. This was when I was working in the Black Hills. There's a lifestyle center there, just next to Rushmore up in South Dakota. And that's what we did, put this patient on the whole food plant-based diet. We put this patient on the exercise. We put this patient on the massage for relaxation, Bible studies, and the whole 9 yards. And I saw that patient stayed with us for a month and a half. At the beginning, he could barely walk. And when he left, he was running miles a day. I saw it with my own eyes. And when he went back to his cardiologist was shocked that atherosclerosis started to reverse. In fact, he told me, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You are actually in the right track. And he actually wrote a really nice article in their local newspaper there, telling the story, witnessing, what had taken place in the life of this person. So as you can see, we may need to do some comprehensive changes to our habits, but it's possible to do it with the help of God. And imagine if this church can become, isn't it, that center of healing. So people that are coming, not only suffering from heart problems, but also heart problems, can come here and experience that healing and blessing. I believe that's a vision that God has for this congregation. So thank you so much for your attention. May God bless you. And may you continue to fulfill the mission that God has given you here. Thank you very much. It's in my YouTube. And on my, I have a couple of chapters in my book about it.